Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Graham Cluley, independent computer security researcher.
Hello. Hello, everybody. My name's Graham, and for the last 25 years, I have been fighting cyber criminals. I've worked for a number of computer security firms. I started off as a programmer. I wrote antivirus software, and I did that for a while, and I've talked about computer security threats and tried to raise awareness about some of the hacking threats which are out there. And in the last few years, I've been running my own blog as well, where I've been talking about computer security and trying to raise awareness amongst the general public about some of these threats. But what I'd like to do today is, well, first of all, I'd like to dispel one of the myths. Because one of the things which I was told when I first joined the antivirus industry was that all viruses are bad. There's no such thing as a good virus. And this was drummed into me. You know, I would wake up in the morning and I would sing the industry anthem, reminding myself, I'm sure, by the way, there are identity governance anthems as well, but there are also antivirus anthems which you sing in the shower to remind yourself of the great fight against the hackers. I won't do it right now. Maybe in the bar later you can join me if you want to endure a security sea shanty or two. But one of the things which I was always told was there's no such thing as good viruses, and it'd be drummed into me. Well, now I'm an independent. I can get rid of all that. I can say what I like. The shackles are off. In fact, yes, well done, any of you got that one, because I feel released without those sort of shackles, because now I can introduce to you my favorite computer virus of all time. Okay? Are the doors shut? All right, just you guys I'm going to share this with. Huddle up. Here we are. This is my favorite computer virus of all time. It's called Casino. It was written on the island of Malta. It's an early DOS virus which came out in the early 1990s. And for those of you who can't read it on the screen, because maybe you're sitting at the back, I will tell you what it says. It says, I have just destroyed the FAT on your disk. That's a file allocation table, the thing which remembers where all your files are. If you lose the file allocation table, you can't find your files anymore. They're scattered across the sectors of your hard drive, but your computer operating system can't necessarily tell how to piece them all together again. It's like a jigsaw, and all the pieces have gone higgledy-piggledy. However, says the virus, I have kept a copy in RAM, in memory, and I'm giving you one last chance to restore your precious data. Warning, if you reset now, all your data will be lost forever. It's actually the days before sound cards, so they signify maniacal laughter with a couple of exclamation marks. And it says, your data depends on a game of jackpot. It's saying, think of a number between 1 and 10. And if you get the number right, you get your data back. Sounds kind of fun, right? Well, there's bad news and good news. The bad news is, I'm going to now need some audience participation, which I know is something you don't want to do. The good news is that there's not going to be any bringing of people up on stage. There's no shark-infested custard going to drop down on top of you. Nothing bad is going to happen when you participate, okay? But I do require participation because we're all going to play the game. It's a great way to wake up in the morning when you're listening to a computer security talk, right? So this is what we're going to do. I want you to tell me who's going to press number 1? Hands up if you're going to press number 1. Come on. Nobody. Okay. Who's going to press number 2? This could get awkward. Yes, one person. I think I saw one person put their hand up for number 2. Who's going to press number 3? Yes, you've seen nothing bad happen to the people who press number 1. And number 2, that's excellent. Who's going to press number 4? Yes, a few of you. Number 5? Number 6? Slight groaning confidence. Number 7? It's interesting. If you say number 7 in that way, more people put their hands up. Number 8? Anyone going to go for number 8? Number 9? Number 9? Number 9, number 9, that's one for the old hippies in the audience. Number 10, who's going to press number 10? You're going to press number 10, are you? Technical support. Good luck finding that on the keyboard. Who's going to sit there like a lemon and do nothing? Most of you. Who is going to do the Vulcan nerve pinch, Control-Delete? Who's going to press Control-Delete? Anybody? Well, good, because if you press Control-Delete, the virus intercepts that interrupt, that software interrupt, and it displays a message saying, ha ha, say bye to your balls, and you lose your data. Who's going to turn the computer off? Anyone going to turn the computer off? Big switch. Oh dear, the virus was telling the truth. It only has a copy of your file allocation table in memory, so you've just lost all your data. Who is going to ring an antivirus expert? Someone like me or your computer security firm, something like that. Who's going to do that and ask for help? Okay. Do you know what we're going to say to you? We're going to say, think of a number between 1 and 10. Because it's random. We don't know what the answer is. It changes every time. Now, the good news is, occasionally, you get the number right. And you get the number right, and you get your data back. Quite often, you get the number wrong, and you lose your data. But every now and then, you get the number right, and the virus says, yeah, you've got the number right, but I'm going to shag your hard drive anyway. Which kind of appeals to my sense of humor, because I'm very juvenile. But it does make it my favorite virus of all time. But it also proves a very important point, which is that prevention is better than cure. You don't want to be put in this Russian roulette situation of gambling for your data. You need a secure online backup. You need to have had preventative measures in place and protection and layered defenses in place to prevent this malware from getting onto your computer in the first place. Just as you do if you get hit by a virus like this. This is a notorious piece of ransomware. Ransomware is one of the most common and most dangerous threats which businesses are facing right now. This one is called TeslaCrypt. As far as I know, has nothing to do with the cars. But what it does is it takes your important data, your sensitive documents inside your company, and it encrypts them. And it encrypts them with a key that you do not know. And there's no way to decrypt them because it's proper maths, proper encryption, unless you give money to the criminals and you transfer them money via Bitcoin. And this is the rather attractive blue screen of extortion, which they display to you, telling you that you have to pay up if you want to get your data back. Not a problem if you've got a backup. Not a problem if that backup works. Not a problem if you can put that backup and restore that backup in a timely fashion. But during that period of time, you may be out of business and you may be bleeding money because you're not able to do business because this attack has happened. And this is 25 years after the previous virus. In some ways, it's kind of similar. The big change is now they're not just doing it for mischief. With Casino, there was no point other than to make people like me laugh. Now they're doing it for money, hard, cold cash. There's a lot of mischief which goes on. And in April 2013, there was a crash on the stock market. 140 points. The Dow Jones plummeted. It lost $61 billion. And you might be racking your mind, what happened in April 2013 to cause that to happen? Well, I'll tell you what happened. All it took for $61 billion to be knocked off the US stock exchange were 12 words. Just 12 words had that impact. 12 words, or if you prefer, 72 characters, including the spaces and the punctuation. And I'm going to show you what those devastating 12 words were. Breaking. 2 explosions in the White House, and Barack Obama is injured. And you may be thinking, hang on, I don't remember that. I don't recall that happening. But there you are. Associated Press have just reported a terrorist act in the White House. The president possibly injured. Who knows? Maybe dead as well. The stock market's zoom. $61 billion is knocked off. And why did that have so much impact? It had an impact because Associated Press, the real Associated Press Twitter account, tweeted out that news. And there are 2 million people following Associated Press on Twitter. And there are journalists following Associated Press, clearly, but there are also financial organizations, and the algorithms kick in, and the selling begins on the stock market. $61 billion destroyed off the stock market within a matter of just a couple of minutes. And the reason why Associated Press tweeted that was not because it was true, of course, because Associated Press weren't the ones who tweeted it. It was their Twitter account which tweeted it, which had been hacked by a group called the Syrian Electronic Army, a group of hackers who are pro-Assad and generally are anti-American and anti-American businesses and anti-media organizations who had made it a policy, and they had begun a campaign of hacking into the social media accounts, the email accounts, the company servers of companies in order to steal information or cause mischief. They weren't doing it directly in this particular case to make money. But they managed to hack into Associated Press's account. And the reason was that Associated Press didn't have proper authentication set up on their social media accounts. Their company had been hacked in the simplest way imaginable. One of their staff had been sent a phishing email. They'd been sent an email claiming to come from another media agency. One of their staff clicked on the link, got taken to what they thought was Twitter, and they typed in the Twitter username and password to log in. Now, hackers have control over your Twitter account because they could have had additional protection, but they didn't have any additional protection in place. And the damage is done. Now, the Syrian Electronic Army were up to their fun and games for a couple of years, breaking into companies. And in some cases, they were doing it for money. In some cases, they were breaking into organizations and they were stealing data, and they were then extorting the money from those companies, saying, unless you pay us $100,000, we are going to release this information to the press, or we're going to publish it online. And damage is obviously being done to your brand and your reputation, and your customers and your partners may no longer want to do business with you. And they weren't necessarily targeting specific companies, they were just doing it to make money. Because, they were young guys, and they had the ability, and it really wasn't rocket science to do it. But there's one problem, one challenge, which the Syrian Electronic Army face when they're launching those kind of attacks in order to get money. And the challenge, if you think about it, is fairly obvious. The challenge they have is that they are in Syria. And in Syria, they've got a problem. Well, they've got a whole heap of problems, right? But one of the problems which you have if you're a criminal trying to scam the rest of the world is, how do you get money into Syria? Because there are sanctions, and you cannot move money into Syria. If you're a US company, you cannot pay money to some guy in Syria. That's going to be stopped. It's going to be blocked by your bank, any attempt to do that. So they were trying to blackmail American companies and other European companies as well, but they couldn't get the cash. And so the hackers would start a dialogue with their victims, and they would slowly be haggled down in terms of the amount of money which they would agree to accept. And they would send messages like this. So, I think you agree on 7,500 euros, a lot less than originally planned. You've got to know, I'm in Syria, it's going to be a hassle sending me the money from the States because of the sanctions and so forth. What I suggest is you send us money via China or GB or Russia, Germany, etc. And it just so happens that the Syrian Electronic Army had a friend who was based in Germany. In fact, he's based in the town of Waltershausen, in the heart of Germany. Anyone know Waltershausen? I'd be surprised if you did. Sounds like it's just a couple of thousand people who live there. But a guy called Pierre Romar was living in Waltershausen in Germany, and he was the intermediary. And so what would happen is the hackers would say, hey, we've got another victim, they want to pay us some money, can you please deal with them? Can you contact them, tell them how to pay you, and then you can get us the money later? And Pierre said, sure, yeah, I can do that, I can help that. So what did Pierre do? Well, he emailed the victim companies. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. He did it, yes, sheesh indeed. He did it from his personal email address, pierreromar.mail@gmail.com. hardly the smartest thing in the world. But things were about to get much worse for Pierre Romar, because some of the companies were a little bit bureaucratical. And maybe you work for a bureaucratical company yourself. And some of the companies said, look, okay, so we get the deal, right? We don't want you to release the data, but we want an assurance that you're not going to do anything with the data after we've paid you. So our legal department requires you to complete a contract. For real. And they sent Pierre a contract, said, you know, I agree that we will take the money and we won't release the data and we'll return it to you, et cetera, et cetera. But they demanded that he sign it as well, and they asked for some information in order to authenticate his identity, you know, name, address, scan of his passport, which, you know, he's thinking, oh, lovely, I'm going to get some euros out of this, and so he sent them a scan of his passport. Lesson 101 for cyber criminals, don't send them a copy of your passport. It's not going to work, guys. So cyber criminals, dispel from your minds right now the myth that all cyber criminals are geniuses or they're hacking masterminds. Quite often, they're really not. I mean, the Syrian Electronic Army, the nature of their attacks were often very unsophisticated, but then their methods of trying to get the cash afterwards were really, really dumb. And that's why now Pierre Romar has pleaded guilty in a US court, and there are also attempts, he was extradited from Germany, there are also attempts to convict some other members of the Syrian Electronic Army as well. So we won't be seeing too much more of their antics going on. But we need to be careful, right? It's very easy to say, oh, hackers are all idiots and all the rest of it. You've got to be careful, because if you stereotype hackers, they might attempt to get their revenge. Here are some headlines from one particular day. This is the British press, the quality British tabloid press, actually some of them not so tabloid there as well, who were talking about the arrest of a hacker in June 2011, just 5 years ago. And this particular guy who was arrested was a member of a hacking gang called LulzSec. And LulzSec were very, very active. They were doing it mostly for the lulz, or for the laughs. And they were very active on Twitter, and they had a big following. They were launching denial of service attacks, and they were stealing data and causing mischief and doing all kinds of awful things. And this guy got arrested. And the British press went crazy. They claimed that this guy was the sort of #1 hacker in the world who had been arrested in his house. Police swoop on teen cyber criminal mastermind, so on and so forth. They got pictures of inside his house. Here is the evil HQ of the ultimate hacker. Look at that. He's got 2 monitors. Instantly makes someone suspicious if they've got 2 monitors and 2 keyboards. Oh, my God. Double the hacking. Imagine that. Swivel chair. He has a rather interesting, you probably can't see, but he has an interesting approach to art, if you see the picture of the 2 ladies in the painting on the wall. And of course, he has the extractor fan, where he's extracting all those teenage pheromones out into the general atmosphere. And anyone who has a teenage son probably recognizes just how important it is to have one of those in your house in order to protect yourself. So that is where he's alleged to have masterminded the cyber attacks from. And the press were going bonkers. They were saying, and then finally, one of the newspapers said, we have got a picture of what he looks like. The teenage cyber terrorist. Do you want to see what he looked like? Yes, good. This is what he looks like. There he is. 19-year-old when he's arrested, but the best the British press can do is actually find a picture of him at school when he was 13 years old. And this was the guy, the #1 hacker in the world. He wasn't even really a hacker. What he was doing was he was running a botnet of computers. So a group of computers all under his control, he could order them to bombard websites with traffic, knock them offline. And unfortunately for LulzSec, they attacked groups like the Serious Organized Crime Agency, a big cybercrime fighting agency in the UK, as well as businesses as well. And that's obviously going to draw attention to yourself. But the press were going bonkers. and they were going mad. And one of our most notorious newspapers, who aren't adverse to a little bit of hacking themselves, The Sun had this headline: "Hack the Lad, Essex Geek 19 arrested for being a global cyber villain." And when you read the story, it was quite remarkable. In the first 100 words, they described him as nerdy, geeky, reclusive, and oddball. So they were really sort of continuing the stereotypes. Now, this is why I say you shouldn't really stereotype hackers too much, because it can come to actually bite you in the bottom. The hackers may try and get their revenge. The Sun published this extraordinary story about Ryan Cleary, the member of LulzSec. And then guess what happens? The Sun gets hacked. And anyone who went to the Sun's website would see a story about Rupert Murdoch, who owns News International and the Sun newspaper, his body being discovered in the front garden, him having taken drugs. It's a humorous story about this. It's completely and utterly fake, just like the Associated Press story. And the hackers, the LulzSec gang who perpetrated this attack after one of their mates was arrested, didn't do it actually by hacking into the content management system on the Sun website. What they did was they changed the Sun's DNS records. And this is one of them sneaky ways in which your company could be attacked as well. It may not actually be a problem on your servers, but you've got some third-party company which looks after your DNS records, which tells browsers where to go if you type companyxyz.com. And in this case, the hackers redirected it to a server under their control where they had fake information. This has happened to other big companies before. It's happened to Twitter, for instance. Everyone went to Twitter and suddenly they saw this weird message about Islam, and it was because hackers had changed the DNS records of the site. So be careful about stereotyping hackers. Having said that, I'm now going to stereotype hackers. Malicious hackers, as I've said, are not geniuses. This guy, for instance, doesn't know how to change a light bulb. This one, these guys, they clearly don't know how to use the thermostat, hence they've wrapped themselves up against the cyber chill. This guy here is obviously concerned his webcam has been hacked, but he has no regard whatsoever about leaving fingerprints all over his keyboard. And if you've ever tried to actually use a laptop like that, you'll realize it's completely ineffective. So he's not smart enough to realize it's easier to sit down at a table. But some of the hackers really are dumb. Let me give you some examples. This is Onel de Guzman. And Onel de Guzman, on May the 4th, 2000, released a virus, a famous virus. At the time, it was the biggest and widest spreading virus of all time. It was called the love bug, or the I love you worm, sometimes called love letter. And in some ways, it was very, very clever. The way in which it was clever was the subject line was, I love you. 3 words which are understood all around the world, right? Even if you don't speak English, you know the words, I love you. And it said, kindly check the attached love letter coming from me. So it would forward itself from other people's mailboxes to you, and you'd think, ooh, that cute girl in the accounts department has sent me a love letter. I'm going to have to read this. Or it'd be your boss, and you think, what? He sent me a love letter, I'm going to have to read this. Whatever your situation was, whether you thought it was humorous or whether you thought it was flirtatious, you were going to click on the attachment. And because Microsoft have made the basic decision, mistake in fact, of allowing the final extension of files to be hidden on Windows by default. So this file was called loveletterforyou.txt.vbs, but on many people's installation of Windows, it wouldn't show the .vbs, which would tell you it was a Visual Basic script rather than a text file. So, by the way, thank you, Bill Gates, wherever you are. If it weren't for you, I would have no computer security career. He really has helped us enormously in computer security with decisions like that. Continues to this day, that particular one. But if you clicked on that file, it would then forward itself to everybody else. Now, what people forget about de Guzman's love bug is not that it infected millions and millions of computers around the world in May 2000, but what it was actually trying to do. Because it was actually trying to steal your internet usernames and passwords behind the scenes, and then send them to Onel de Guzman in his little apartment in Manila in the Philippines. May 2000, Manila in the Philippines. What do you think the broadband's like? Not that great, I'll be honest with you. And he's just infected hundreds of millions of computers all around the world, all of which are trying to send him their usernames and passwords. He hadn't completely thought this through. He had effectively denial of serviced himself with a sheer swamp of traffic which was coming towards him. So his virus spread, but frankly, there was very little exploitation of internet usernames and passwords, which he managed to achieve. Now, de Guzman had a friend go into the same college in Manila. His name was Michael Bowen. Here he is, Michael Bowen, and he wrote a word macrovirus, which just every now and then would display a dialog box with a funny sort of quote from a Clippy-like character, if you'd been infected by his word virus. But at the end of the month, it would display a message, actually print out a message on your printers. And that's the first time many people realized they were infected. It said, warning, if I don't get a stable job by the end of the month, I will release a third virus that will remove all folders in the primary hard disk, or in layman's terms, oh good, I like layman's terms, para ko na ring fi normat ang hard disk mo. Now, is there anyone from the Philippines here? No? Anyone speak Tagalog? Guess it's going to have to be me then. Fortunately, I can speak Tagalog. And I can tell you that para ko na ring fi normat ang hard disk mo roughly translates as, I'm going to shag your hard drive. That's what he was saying. Now, he displayed this message on people's printers, right? He printed it out. But the mistake he made was he also included his CV, his resume, because he really wanted a job. Name, address, job history, phone number, right? Not geniuses. But the truth is they don't need to be geniuses. A lot of the old attacks still work so well. If someone emailed out to millions of people a dangerous movie file with a 0-day vulnerability in it, and they called it something like, I don't know, Jennifer Lopez naked, or whoever the current big star is, I don't know, Beyonce or something like that, there will be people, not just Republican candidates for presidency, who would click on that attachment. You know, they begin to get the twitch and they think, oh, I cannot resist, you know? And you go, mustn't click. I know I shouldn't, but you're just going to click. And bam, you've been infected again. So the hackers don't have to be that smart. The same techniques work over and over again, which is why we need much better ways of authenticating email. We need better ways of determining people's identity in order to prevent these sort of attacks from happening. Because sometimes they are more serious. There's a hacking group active right now called Dark Overlord. And what Dark Overlord are doing is they are hacking into big corporations. Maybe they're using very simple techniques initially in order to get people access to people's email passwords, for instance. And of course, there's so much information in your email archive, which they can then exploit further. But once they've got that, they begin to steal the data, right? Or maybe they're exploiting a SQL injection vulnerability on your website, but they're stealing all of the data. And Dark Overlord has demanded from some companies around about $500,000. And they said, if you do not provide us with the money, we are going to start leaking it onto the internet, and we're going to contact security journalists, and we're going to we'll just give them a small sample of the data. They will write about your company's security breach, and you've got a PR disaster. And companies are obviously very nervous about that. Some companies have refused to pay, and then what the hackers do is they say, hey, we made them a business offer, and they've declined to pay. That's what they're saying here. In a message, they say that they got spat in the face after they made a handsome offer, business proposal as they call it, and so their hand has been forced to release the company's data. In that particular case, it is a financial company, an investment bank, which is being held to ransom in the United States. So sometimes it's quite serious. And we are seeing an increase in $1 million frauds. One of the ways in which your company quite possibly will be targeted. Again, does not require genius. It doesn't require even any programming skill by the hackers. They don't have to know how to write a malicious piece of software. They could do something as simple as what we call business email compromise, sometimes called whaling, sometimes called CEO fraud. And what it's doing is it's exploiting not a software vulnerability, it's exploiting the bug in your users' brains. Something we can't upgrade is what's going on up here in our skulls. So they will send an email pretending to be the chief executive officer, pretending to be the chief financial officer, and maybe they will target a junior member of the company. And they'll say, hey, I'm currently in Brussels or wherever I am, and I need this money being sent to me, or this sent to this account, or I need these documents to be sent through. And your staff, particularly junior staff, may feel so rattled that their chief executive is making these demands of them that they just do it without thinking. And the criminal receives the money. How do they target people inside your organization? That's easy. You just go onto LinkedIn. LinkedIn is an absolute goldmine of information for online criminals. Your staff are on LinkedIn. Everyone, oh, I want to have even more connections, because that's how I prove I'm popular and really succeeding in business. But it has given an incredible corporate directory to your organization. And the hackers only need one email address to know what the format of your email addresses are inside your organization. Normally it'll be firstname.lastname@company.com. And they can even target down to particular members of staff. Like, for instance, here, I've done a search for PAs to the CEO in London. And I came back with hundreds and hundreds of results of people who I knew would have access to sensitive information. But equally, I could have looked for people in the finance department of different companies. And these attacks work. Earlier this year, Ryanair lost 4.6 million euros. Airlines have a lot of money swirling around in their bank accounts, and the reason they have money swirling around is because they need to buy fuel. And they need to buy fuel when it's competitively priced. And so a member of Ryanair's finance team received a message which they believed was from an executive telling them to move 4.6 million euros into a Chinese bank account. And they lost the money. Bam, it's gone. But it gets worse than that. $40 million lost by an Austrian firm, a company who are making spare parts and manufacturing parts for Boeing, a company called FACC. And its financial accounts department was targeted. They lost over $50 million, $54 million or 50 million euros stolen from it as a result of that kind of attack. And then more recently, Leone, a company who I think are maybe German, I'm not sure, but they're a company who make wiring and cables and so forth. They had to go public and say, yes, we've suffered as well. We've just lost 50 million euros through precisely that attack. In that particular case, what happened was the attackers, the fraudsters, targeted a member of the finance department in their Romanian office, where their Romanian factory was, pretending to be some of the German executives, which was like the head office. And the message went through. This was just, I think, last month or August that this happened. 50 million euros lost as a consequence. And it's not just money they're after. Sometimes, yes, it will be as simple as that. So you can't just tell your staff to be careful about, unexpected requests for money or to have a process in place for money transfers. They might also be after other sensitive information from your company. We've seen a series of businesses who've been targeted in order to steal, for instance, health, payroll, insurance information, which the fraudsters can then monetize. And members of staff, in their panic and their desire to help their executives, will just attach the database, send it, and only then do they go, should I have done that? And even if they question it in the email, there's always the chance the CEO will come back and say, of course I need the information. I can't connect to the VPN. I can't access my regular corporate email account. That's why I'm contacting you via Pierre Romar's Gmail account instead. And victims of this kind of attack have included Seagate, the hard disk manufacturer, and also this is Snapchat, who found themselves in the position. Good news is Snapchat users hadn't exposed themselves, which is unusual for Snapchat users. Instead, it was the employees who'd been exposed because of the data which had been stolen. So pretty nasty, and that's a real growing threat. I was giving a talk at a legal conference a month or so ago, and I asked all the solicitors and the law firms there, how many of you have been attacked in this way, have received these kind of fake messages trying to get money or data out of your company? And 75% of them put their hands up, said, yes, we've seen that. So it's a real significant problem. But sometimes the attacks are more audacious than that. This is Barclays Bank. This is a branch of Barclays Bank in an area of London called Swiss Cottage in North London. And what happened with them was the hackers didn't come in via the internet. They came in through the front door. And this guy came in. This chap came in, and he pretended to be an IT support guy. How do you disguise yourself as an IT support guy? Easy. Right? So you just loaf in, and he started fiddling with some of the cables on the back of someone's computer. Now, I've worked in big companies, and I've worked in companies where I don't know everybody who works in the IT department. So I asked myself, what would I do if someone did that to me? And I'd probably say, hello, can I help you? What are you doing? But if he just replied and said, oh, I'm from the IT department, just fixing something with the network, I would probably, in all honesty, I'd probably leave it at that. Because I don't want to be that arse who rings up the IT support desk and says, there's a guy here who claims he's from IT, fiddling with my computer, you know, because they just think, oh, it's Graham Cluley again, he's causing trouble. You know, you don't want to do that. But this guy's just walked in from the street and is fiddling around with the computers, claiming to be from the IT department. And what he was doing was plugging in this device. This is a KVM, a keyboard video mouse device. It is capturing what is going on the user's screen. It's capturing every key press and every mouse movement. And this particular one has been set up with a 3G broadcaster as well. So it's transmitting via 3G to a nearby hotel everything which is happening on that computer terminal. And the rest of the gang are in the hotel room watching. And what they did was the next morning, they got up early before the bank opened, and via the KVM, via 3G, they took remote control of that computer, and they transferred £1.25 million into a bank account under their control. And it looked like it was the regular member of staff inside the bank who had done it. But in fact, it had been because this guy had gone in and planted this little black box inside the organization. Now, Barclays managed to recover some of that money, but it's still missing over half, over £700,000. It still has not recovered to this day because that happened. And this is just a small branch office. Some of you may have little branch offices as well, rather than all working in one HQ. And you have to ask yourself, you know, how good is the security in those offices? Is there a danger that someone could come in claiming to fix the water cooler, or that guy who comes in and is fixing the printer, or the people who hoover and vacuum the place at 9 o'clock at night, and who have access to all of your computers while there's no one else there, and potentially could be plugging in devices? And the criminals didn't stop there. They also attacked another bank, Santander. This is Santander in Surrey Quays, another part of London, which they also targeted. But by this time, the police had been informed, and they had warned banks across London to be on the lookout for this. And as a result, the hackers were, or the fraudsters at the very least, were arrested. Here they are. The ringleader is Tony Colston-Hayter. He ended up actually having to pay, all of them ended up with jail sentences. He ended up having to pay the grand total of £1 in fines, despite being found to have stolen or be responsible for £850,000. I don't know quite how he managed it. In fact, the audacity of this gang was enormous. He didn't even pay the pound. His girlfriend paid it in the court. And the next guy was the guy who pretended to be the IT guy. His name is Lane Mullins Abudu. And there's a couple of other guys who were in the gang as well. but real audacious attempt to steal money. And that's the sort of thing which we are beginning to see more and more. And I can't help but think that better identity testing, identity checking, as people actually gain physical access, just as you should do if people are coming in over the network or computer system as well, and authentication of that would have helped enormously. As it was, the gang have been caught, but Barclays Bank are still down over 700,000. Now, a lot of my talk has been kind of depressing about the bad things which can happen through hacking and cybercrime and things like that, but it's easy to get depressed. Maybe I've been scaring you for the last 30 minutes or so. But more important than anything else, there are some really smart, good guys and girls who are working in this business. And it's events like this which are bringing smart people together, which give me hope for the future, that we can better protect our businesses, we can learn best practices, we can share information, we can ignore our commercial rivalries in order to build a safer internet. So don't think of the glass as being half empty. We don't really know how lucky we are. Because despite all of the threats which are out there, we have to recognize we're in amazing times. The internet brings dangers, but it also brings the most marvelous, fantastic things as well. We're working together, all of us who work in IT, to make the internet safer, and I think we can feel really proud of that. Thank you very much. Now, I think we might, I don't know, do we have time for a couple of questions? Does anyone have a question? If not, I'll just awkwardly shuffle off the stage. No? Fantastic. Well, maybe I'll bump into some of you during the break, but thank you very much indeed. Cheers.